All right, guys, Mike here from the Wellness Bucket. Very, very excited to have with me today, Chris Guillebeau. Chris, thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Chris, I'm not going to lie. There's just too many accolades here for me not to read. So I can't I can't actually verbally just say them. So I'm just going to read here real quickly because I want to make sure people who don't know who you are know who you are. You are a New York Times bestselling author of and a modern day explorer. We'll get into that in a second. Your first book, The Art of Nonconformity, was translated into more than 20 languages. Your second book, the $100 Startup, one of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah, was a New York Times bestselling, New York Times and Wall Street bestseller, selling more than 300,000 copies worldwide. That's insane.
I think most of them were to my mom, probably. My mom, my sister, you. So
right.
Thanks.
There's three right there. And then you had another book, The Happiness of Pursuit, another favorite of mine, in September 2014. Another New York Times bestselling author, because one wasn't enough. And then your most recent, earlier this year, was a book, Born for This. Awesome book as well. And if that's not enough, you've also visited 193 countries in the world, which I believe a couple of years ago when you did that, it was the record. I mean, it was 193 countries, and they had to go add like another 3, right? So now it's like 196 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. There's these different lists and all that kind of stuff.
True,
Yeah.
but 193 is still, I mean, it's insane. And then lastly, because that's not enough, is you host the World Domination Summit, which I have been to several times, a worldwide gathering of remarkable people for a weekend-long experience focused on community, adventure, service, looking to answer the one question, which is, hey, how do we live a remarkable life in a conventional world? So, I mean, just a ton going on there. So, with that said, man, I want to dive right in, which leads me to my very first question. So, just one of these is enough to kind of just to sound daunting, like, whether it's putting on the conference, whether it's writing a book, whether it's traveling to 193 countries. I'm just curious, Chris, if you don't mind me sharing, what is your strategy when it comes to taking on such a daunting task and seeing it through?
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you for saying all those things. That was nice. I'll make sure I give you the money after the call.
Of course.
Just not while it's recording. I mean, you've been a huge part of so many of these things. Our World Domination Summit, you guys have been there and been leading meetups. And I mean, as to how I do it, I guess I'm really excited about it. Like, I do these things because I believe in them, and I'm very, very restless. I don't relax very well. I love just making stuff, and I love kind of challenging myself. I know that's a value that you have as well, and probably many folks, in your community, also. And so I guess, one, I'm excited about what I do. Like, the number one productivity hack, I think, is to be excited about what you do. And then so many things are so much easier, right? It's really hard to psych yourself up, for something you don't believe in. But if you believe in something, then you'll, at least for me, I'll give it 100%. I know you too. And then I think the second thing probably is, like, it's not like I knew what all these things were going to be when I got started. It's not like 15 years ago, I was like, oh, I want to have, this book and that book and this event. I mean, it all just kind of happened and developed as I went down different paths. And so, like, the events, for example, like, now there's a lot of people involved, but the first time I did a meetup, I think like 8 people came. Wow. And that was huge for me. Like, it was not just huge, it was very, like, meaningful, because, like, those 8 people were, like, really cool. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Like, I don't know these people, but they know me somehow. And so we are actually connected in this weird little way. Let's explore this, and, like, let's see where we can go with that. And so then I started doing more meetups, and that led to the, first WDS. And wow. So it was a few hundred people, which is still, like, huge for me at the time. So everything, the same with writing, I started writing on the blog, and then I want to write a book. So I kind of figure out how that works and just go down that path. So I guess, if somebody's watching and they're not in that same place, if they're just kind of starting out, well, I guess be careful what you wish for, because if you are doing things you're excited about and you are willing to challenge yourself, which probably anyone watching this interview, is already in that space, then only good things can happen. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be successful. But only good things can happen, like, as you kind of answer that call and respond to it. Because if you're really doing something that you believe in, other people are probably going to notice and be attracted to that as well.
That's I love that piece where it's like, hey, make sure you're doing something that you love. And not to talk about your book again, but I'm going to, like, Born for This, gets into that. Hey, man, what are you excited about? Figuring that out. So I love that piece. I know we were talking about strategy, but that piece, figuring out, hey, in case you're like, I don't know what that is. Well, I'm not telling you to go out and read Chris's book, but I'm telling you to go out and read Chris's book. It's awesome, man, because it helps identify that. And I'm with you, Chris. I did I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, I was all into this business I was going with, and man, I just wasn't, the business model made sense, but I just wasn't excited.
Mm.
So I had no desire to keep going. So that's a huge piece of for me as well. So it's cool to hear that's the same for you as far as like getting quote unquote a daunting task like hosting a
Sure.
World Domination Summit done. I got to ask you, man, because this is like I wouldn't say it's not controversial, but some are for it, some are not. I'm for it when it comes to goals, writing down goals, writing down your strategies, even your desired outcomes. I'm curious, do you write that down? If so, yes. If you do, why? If you don't, why?
Oh, I am 100% in favor of it. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably a big part of what has happened. As I said, it wasn't strategic, from the beginning, but as I kind of went down different paths, which is the best thing anybody can do, you kind of explore, you see like, okay, I'm good at this thing. I like this thing, but I'm not too good at it. What's the thing that I'm good at that I also like? As I kind of figured out, okay, I'm coming closer to this intersection, definitely wrote down lots of goals, and I still do. Like every year, I'm very goal oriented, and I don't really understand what the criticism of it could be, I guess, because if you're the one setting the goals, they're your goals. It's not like somebody has imposed this on you, right? Maybe the only criticism is about, well, you have to open yourself up to, possibility and experience and things you hadn't expected. But I think you can still do that, within the framework of your goals. And then if your goals change along the way, that's okay. You change. But, for me, definitely identifying something that I'm working toward has been very helpful, especially with stuff like writing a book. I think how do you write a book without having a goal? It's you can't just like sit down and free write. I mean, it's like a long process of structure and discipline, or training for a marathon or any other kind of like extended physical event. You could probably just go out tomorrow if you've never ran before and run a mile or two. That's cool. But if you're going to try to run, 26 miles, you got to follow a program at some point. So that, by nature implies goals and defining them.
Absolutely. I like how you kind of stated that. It's almost like works not just as goals, but almost like as a blueprint. Hey, man, here's how to follow through on to get it done. I saw this. I forgot where it was, Chris. It was like I think like 80% or maybe a little bit more, believe goal setting is important. Like I think 86%, whatever it was, but only like 3 to 5% actually do it, which blew me away.
Sure.
Like, so everyone thinks it's important, but only 3 to 5% do it. But anyways,
it's probably like any habit, like eating right is important, but a lot of people don't do it. Exercise is important, but et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Well, if you're watching this and you haven't set your goals yet, please do it. Not just one, because it's going to get you that much more closer to your goal, but two, it's just like Chris said, it works as a blueprint, kind of keeping you accountable along the way. Chris, let me ask you this, because this is a biggie. So you take on these daunting tasks, right? Because, writing a book, hosting World Domination Summit, which, by the way, isn't 8 people anymore. It's like thousands. Going to 193 countries, big goals. So along the way, I'm assuming there's got to be failures, doubt, rejection. How do you handle that and keep going? Because that's probably one of the toughest things to do. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I still experience it like all the time, and I have lots of. We were just talking about healthy habits. I think it's good to talk about bad habits too. I think one bad habit is like being envious of others or being jealous of others or comparing yourself. And it's always a dangerous thing. This is kind of totally in that category of like, you shouldn't do this, but yet, a lot of us kind of do. And so I struggle with that. I look at other people who might, be more successful than me or in whatever area or something. And I say like, oh, why couldn't I do that? Like what was wrong with me? Or I experience doubt, shame, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. I guess I've just learned to kind of live with those things. I've just learned to like, okay, they're here, they're in a little box. I can't really just get rid of them or pretend that they're not there. At least that hasn't worked for me. But what I can do is like, at least those things aren't going to, be the driver for me. They're not going to be the thing that makes my decisions for me. I know what I want to do, and I'm going to work toward that. And, I might have this struggle or something as well, and hopefully I can work through that in some different way. But even if I can't like work through it all the way, at least I'm also going to be making, some other kind of progress. So that's all that I've learned to do.
I want to point out one thing that I love in there. Well, a lot I loved in there, but one thing that really resonated with me, Chris, is you said, hey man, I focus on what I want to do, where I'm going, not so much stay and kind of like focus on, oh shit, this happened, because I've been guilty. I've done that myself, and it's kind of it's kept me frozen for a while. But focusing on where you're going, not just so much what happened, but yeah, keep your focus on where you're headed towards. I love that, man. Absolutely love that. This question kind of goes along with the last one, which is, so yeah, you have failure and setback and whatnot along the way. What keeps you motivated? Like, what keeps you going? Like, I guess not to sound too cliche-ish here, but like, what's your why? Like, why do you do what you do, man?
Sure, sure. Well, I love creating. I love making things. Like, kind of get up in the morning and I'm like, what am I working on? I go to bed, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do the next day. Again, I'm motivated, to do the things that I believe in. But I think the second part of that is I'm not like an artist who stays in a cave and doesn't need anybody to appreciate his work. You know what I mean? And like, I think that's fine. Like, there's people who are like, I can spend 5 years writing a book and I don't care if anyone ever reads it. I mean, that's art. I respect it. But for me, like, I definitely value the second part of the puzzle, which is like, one, I'm creating, but then there actually are people, hopefully, who are connecting with that, and there is some kind of intersection there. That's why I do like the tours, where I go to like every 50 state, like all the states, or do these like extensive meetups all over the country and around the world, because I really, really like knowing that I've made something that somehow it has connected with somebody else. So to me, it's those two things. Like, I want to make stuff, but I do actually want it to matter, and I'm not afraid to market. I'm not afraid to kind of pitch or hustle if it's something that I believe in, because again, like, I want both those things.
You want it to matter. You want it to. Yeah. It's almost like ties into, like, I mean, not to get too deep, but almost like ties into legacy. What you're doing is, there's meaning behind it. It's like, it's self-fulfillment, but it matters to maybe even just not just yourself but others, which is pretty, in my opinion, pretty cool. Well, I can tell you,
it's tricky though. It's tricky though, real quick, because like I said, I believe in that 100%. But I also, to go back to the previous thing, I want to be really careful to not get, I don't know, kind of hooked on the admiration effect, or the pseudo fame, micro celebrity effect, and like, I'm happy if I get a lot of likes, on Facebook or something. Like, that's very dangerous. You have to be creating for the right reason. So I think it's almost like, I do want people to engage with it, but ultimately I have to also believe in what I'm making. So it's like there's pitfalls on either side of it. So you have to kind of like walk down the middle, which is interesting, because I'm not a big fan of moderation like anywhere else, but I think it's probably true.
Well, I think it's pretty cool, man, because you're doing obviously what you believe in, what fulfills you, and just to see the impact it's had. Because sometimes you have one, not the other. You have, I mean, it's just both going for you. Like the books, the domination, World Domination Summit. It's like, it's really cool, man. You're doing what you love, what you believe in, and then the impact it's having. So, I mean, that's just, in my opinion, this is just one person, but I think it's awesome. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
No, seriously. Chris, I got to ask you, so from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. It's fun. It's a fun journey. It's wild. It's scary. It's like a roller coaster ride. I'm curious. You've been at this for a while now. What's something? Say you take someone that's getting into entrepreneurship, new to it, all excited about it. What's something you've learned along the way that you're like, man, why didn't I know this? Like, my first year, doing this stuff. Like, what's something that you wish you would have known early off in your entrepreneurial journey, if you will?
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that person, because like, let's assume they're probably coming from an employment background, like they're getting into entrepreneurship, they've had a job before. What I would say is, good news, this is a lot easier than what you've been doing before. Because I actually think, for a lot of folks, entrepreneurship is the safe and conservative choice, myself included. Like, I have no idea what I would try to do if I was going to compete in the job market. Like, I am actually unemployable. I just can't imagine. So I feel like if you're working a day job, like, you're a hero, actually, because you're doing something that's hard. I think, going into entrepreneurship, great. It's not like everything is going to be easy. I don't mean to imply that at all. But, I just feel like your own competence, like what you're good at, that is your security. That is like your, financial retirement plan. And that's your greatest asset. And now all of a sudden you're going to be leveraging that, probably for the first time, because before it's been, all kind of given to your employer, which is fine. That's how the world works. But now, it may be wild and scary, like you said, Mike, but I feel like, now you're actually getting into something where you don't have to tap into 100% of your potential to be successful. You might just have like 30 or 40% at first, but that may be enough, right? And then hopefully you can continue to unlock more and more as you go along. So I would say, good news, life is a lot easier on this side.
That's.
I have to say that because people are always like, entrepreneurship, man, it's so hard. Like, you're taking these risks. Man, I feel like it's risky to like compete in somebody else's world. Like, when you make your own world, and you play by your own rules, it's far less risky, in my opinion.
I would agree with that, and it's cool just to hear you say that. It's like, hey man, you could be using 30% and still be It's good to know that, because sometimes, myself included, guilty. Like, I have to know it. I have to know so much at the beginning to get going. And you're saying, hey man, look, just get going. You're going to learn as you go. You might just tap into 30, 40%. That's really cool to hear. I mean, myself personally, but just even hopefully those listening to it can say, hey, you know what? Okay, I'm cool. I'm good where I am. So. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Okay, so entrepreneurship. Let's talk about that. I believe in like, healthy mind, healthy body, healthy business. I just think it's like this loop. I always joke, you've seen it, Chris. I'm sure that, that GIF or call it that photo of success, and it shows a straight line and then all the ziggly line that says, this is what people think success is this. It's actually, so, navigating that crazy line, of entrepreneurship, I just think exercise is a big part of like keeping you grounded, helping you stay the course, going the distance to, do what you love, be successful. I believe that. I think you believe that. And I want to ask you about that because I know you're big time. You exercise regularly. So I want to dive into that. Like, what do you do for exercise? I think I know because of your posts and I kind of see what you throw out there. But what do you do for exercise? What keeps you going from an exercise perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not big time. I mean, I think that's your department. Like, I can learn a lot from you in related to this for sure. For me, exercise is, I don't want to say it's a means to an end because I do like it and I enjoy it, but I'm definitely not obsessed with it. Like, for me, I do it because I believe it's part of being healthy, mind, body, spirit, as you said. In the past, I've ran some marathons. These days, I run, 10K. I could go out and run maybe on Sundays. I'll do a little bit longer run, like 6 to 9 miles, but that's kind of the extent. That's the farthest I go these days. So I try to run 3 or 4 days a week, usually 3 or 4, sometimes 5 miles at a time. Do a little bit of strength training, not much weights, but like push-ups and stuff. I do yoga once a week. Nice. So that's my kind of thing. So I kind of maintain a base. I'm not at like a great fitness level where I couldn't go out and run a marathon now, but I think I'm at a decent enough, level that I could train for something else if I wanted to, and if not, at least I'm not getting unhealthy.
Sure. And I like that you have like a mixture. You have a little resistance, you have a little yoga, you have a little running. I got to ask you this, and everything you just said, well, maybe the yoga, you have to find a studio, but because you travel a bunch, obviously, and I always see, running is one thing. Like, let me ask you this, like, is that typically what is that your go-to when you're traveling? Is it the running? Yeah.
Yep, because what do you need for it? You need running shoes. That's it, basically. Right? And even like strength training, like I said, I don't do a lot of weights, so I can do push-ups anywhere. I can do stretches, yoga. It's easy. So I like that.
And I actually like your Instagram post. It's usually, it's hey, going for a run. It's just you and your sneakers wherever you are, a little limb, which I love. So let me ask you: do you feel, and everyone's going to answer this differently? Do you believe, and if so, how? How does exercise contribute to like your continued success as an entrepreneur? Oh. Does it, and if so, how? What's your
Sure. Well, I think it contributes to my well-being, and that therefore that contributes to like whatever else, right? Because if you're sick, or even not to stay sick, if you're not well, if you're not active, I don't think you're going to be able to produce your greatest work, and I think that's going to be a hindrance in lots of different parts of your life. So. Yeah, I have no doubt that it contributes, positively. I think maybe one thing, just maybe tactical, is when I run, I do tend to get ideas. I get different ideas. I'm not always like, it's not like every day I'm going out for a run and like come back with a brilliant idea. Lots of times I'm just listening to my music or just kind of zoning out. But sometimes I do kind of pick up on things and that turns into something later. So I think it unlocks something creatively. Also, I have ADD, so there's a lot of connection between like physical activity and ADD, and like it's a natural kind of remedy, or at least treatment for that. So, and I've noticed that like when I go out for runs, they definitely have that kind of runner's high, which is natural, and then it helps your creativity.
Sure, absolutely. I'm the same way. Sometimes I can't run back fast enough because I have 10 ideas. I'm trying to remember them all and jot them all down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I want to make one statement there is just, usually it's like, hey, we work our tails off, to find whatever level of success, whatever success means to us. Well, hell, if we're going to work that hard, I always say, hey, the ultimate failure is achieving the success that you're out to achieve and not having the health then to enjoy it. That's crappy. Yeah,
because you can't get that back, right? I mean, exactly. It's very difficult, So.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that. Everyone has their ideas of that, so I'm glad to get your input on that.
Sure.
Chris, what was your number one? Actually, let me ask you, what's your number one goal at the moment? Let me ask you, what's your number one fitness goal? Forget fitness, health goal. What's your number one health goal?
No, it's good. That's good. No, I do have some health goals. I mean, past couple of years, I have struggled quite a bit with anxiety and depression, and like I've written about this a little bit, and so I'm happy to share. And so I've kind of done some different treatments. I've been going to therapy, and I did make a decision earlier this year to go on some medication for that. And that was a decision I didn't take lightly because, for a long time I was like, I don't really want to do that. And it finally just kind of reached the point that like, I need a little bit of a baseline. So I made that choice to do that for at least a year. And so I guess my number one goal right now is just to kind of be well and just to, kind of not go into like a place of despair, which I'm not right now. Like I'm in a good spot. But I just try to be conscious of like, okay, what has caused that to happen before in the past, and how can I make sure, that I do maintain a healthy baseline? Because it's just like with anything else, with running or whatever, if I don't have that, then I can't really do anything else, or at least I won't be able to do it well.
Absolutely. I got to say this. I was going to, ask this next question, but I'm just going to go ahead and interject this statement. I got to commend you, man. I have to commend you big time. And I wasn't even going to say this, but I'm going to say this. I don't care. I need to commend you for saying what you just said. How you like, what, man? Hey, here's my struggle with anxiety. I'd be lying to say if I didn't have that myself. I actually come from a family. My three sisters, they all have it, and luckily, exercise seems to help me. Like, thank God for that. But I commend you for actually, saying that and opening up about that, because there's a ton of people that I know because I've spoken to them, and I'm sure there's tons who do deal with that, and sometimes they don't want to address it or acknowledge it or do what they need to do to take care of it. So, Chris, thank you for sharing that, man. That's huge for, I'm sure, people who are listening. Like, oh shit, that's not that abnormal. That's actually normal. I don't want to say normal, but it's okay to feel that way. It actually sometimes comes with whatever. So thank you for sharing that, man.
No, of course. Of course. I try to be open about it. Like I said, I'm just kind of learning as I go along the way. So yeah, if you're out there and you struggle, like, you're not alone, for sure.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. And that's huge. Question here. Ready? Aside from the obvious ones, I'm going to take them away from you. It's like, hey, what are you most grateful for? I'm alive, I'm healthy. I'm going to take those two away from you. Sure. What are you most grateful for at the moment, aside from life and health?
Aside from life and health, okay. Man, I feel like I feel really lucky. I feel fortunate. I still honestly, like, I don't know if it's every day, but I would say, like, on a regular basis, I'm kind of like, can't believe, like, I can do this, can't believe, like, I remember, like, almost 20 years, ago now, like, I'm getting old, I'm 38, like 20 years ago, when I had my last real job, like, became an entrepreneur, quote unquote, which I wasn't really like starting a big business. I was just like hustling, for myself, however I could. I had no idea that I'd be able to kind of keep doing that, first of all, for so long. And then also at some point actually turn it into like a pseudo career, to where it wasn't just like enriching myself, but hopefully also helping other people as well. So I'm grateful for that. I'm fortunate. And I know it, and that's why I like to work hard, because I don't think I deserve it. So since I don't deserve it, I got to give back wherever I can. Yeah,
I'll harass you offline with it. You feel like you don't deserve it. There's a statement that every time I hear someone say, "Hey, I don't deserve it," or "I'm lucky, I've got lucky," I can't help but harass them and say, "Hey, man. Usually the harder you work, the luckier you are." So
It's true. It's tricky though. I completely agree. Like, if you want to be more lucky, you take more chances. Like that old quote. I do, but I also feel like I have certain privilege in my life and certain opportunities that I might not have had if my life had been different in some way. So I try to be aware of that.
No, I love the your humility it's awesome. So you're an author, you write books, and they're awesome because I read them all. What book? What was it? Well, actually, what book are you currently reading, or have you just finished reading? I'm just curious what you.
Yeah. Sure. Let's see. I mostly read fiction, just because I write nonfiction. So I kind of that's my like professional world. So I mostly read like literature. And I've started reading some Kurt Vonnegut, which I never actually read before. Like, I knew he was like a famous author who wrote lots of stuff, but. So I'm kind of like delving into his works now, and I've been reading some of his early novels and also a biography of him. The last nonfiction book I read, I think it was called The Spy Who Couldn't Spell, which is this great story of like espionage, true story of an American spy who was like selling secrets, but he also had dyslexia. That's kind of what led to him like being caught. And so it was like the people who were trying to catch him and in his life and like how it all kind of played out. And I thought it was really well done.
I love that you write nonfiction and like, hey, you know what? I need a break from them. I'm gonna read fiction. I'm gonna read fiction. That's cool, man. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Chris, this has been awesome, man. From a standpoint of like, you sharing your strategy, because I think you're one of the best who does it. It's not easy to like to take on one of the things you've done. Well, you've done multiple things, multiple books, the World Domination Summit. It's incredible. So I appreciate you taking the time, sharing that knowledge with us, and even just your insights. So thank you so much. Hey, if people want to learn more about you, your books, World Domination Summit, everything you're up to, how can they get a hold of you? How can they learn more about you?
Sure. Well, I'm easy to find. It's chrisguillebeau.com, or any of the books should be in any bookstore or Amazon. But I'm happy to email people or connect however they want to connect.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, this has been a pleasure to hang out with Chris and chat with him. Chris, thank you so much for being here again, once again, man. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Mike, you're awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. Cheers.